You're listening to Breaking Biz Dev with John Tyerman and Mark Wainwright. Conversations that break down, beat up, and redefine business development for the professional services firms of tomorrow. And now for your hosts, John and Mark.
Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Biz Dev. If it's your first time here, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast where Mark and I like to beat up and break down topics related to business development. My name's John, and I'm joined, as always, by my trusted co-host, Mark Wainwright.
Hello, John. I am looking forward to our conversation today. This is an interesting topic, the ideal client profile. And we may even use an acronym with this. The ideal client profile is our ICP. I know people love their acronyms out there, so we may even use that. So this is a good one, and this applies across marketing and sales. You know, when we invoke our marketing and sales continuum, the number ones being marketing focused activities, number 5 sales focused activities, and we march our way through. I think this ICP concept applies across that whole sort of marketing and sales continuum.
Yeah. On a recent episode, we were just talking about the underdog effect and why that's killing your business. And I think an ideal client profile is a way to help you kind of understand the best clients, the right kinds of clients that you want to go after, so you can avoid being in that underdog effect situation.
All right, John. So here's the big question. So let's get an understanding of what is an ideal client profile.
An ideal client profile is really a product of research that you do on your best fit customers. And it's a tool that can help your team align your sales efforts, your marketing efforts, direct the creation of messaging for marketing content. And it can even help you understand which channels are the best ones to use to reach those prospective buyers. So think of it like your North Star for your business development efforts. And I think that it's a tool that you can use in your toolkit to help find the best kind of clients for your firm.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, when you say that, one additional sort of question comes to mind is that, does an organization need, or can an organization have multiple ideal client profiles?
You can absolutely have multiple ideal client profiles. Some folks might split hairs and, say, well, what's the difference between an ideal client profile and a buyer persona? And I think they're related. There's probably some overlap. You could think about, your ideal client profile as maybe an umbrella, and there's different personas underneath of that relate to different geographies or different verticals. So yeah, I think that you can, and it just depends on, does that make the most sense for your firm and your clients?
Makes total sense. So I'm kind of assuming there's some different bits and pieces of an ideal client profile. What are all these different elements that fit within or make up an ideal client profile?
Yeah, so in professional services, we're dealing with not only other businesses or accounts, but we're dealing with people too, right? There's the company, and then there's the individuals within that company. And so I think that's, imagine a 2x2 matrix, right? Where you've got the company and individuals as your horizontal axis. And then you split those up in your vertical columns. You've got primary data around the company, primary data around the individuals, and then you've got secondary data. And so let me back up for a second. Let me explain. So what is primary data? Primary data needs to be uncovered by you. Secondary data is available out there. You can go to Zoom Info, you can go to LinkedIn, you can go to all these different sources to find data like industry or company size and location or number of offices. Those are all secondary data pieces that relate to the company. So firmographics, right?
Got it.
Job titles, role, and department. These are all secondary pieces of information that relate to the individuals within that company. The primary data that you need to construct your ideal client profile You need to find that out yourself. You go out and talk to your customers. This can happen in sales conversations. You could do this through the lens of maybe it's a research project that you're taking on. But some primary data examples for a company might be their strategic goals and objectives, or some of the major business challenges that they're facing, or maybe it's technographics, right? So what are some of the technology platforms that are using, and maybe that's a good or bad fit with your company, right?
Gotcha. I love how you're framing this, because what we're talking about here is what's most important. Secondary data is not most important here. The primary data here is really what we're kind of chasing after in our little 2x2 matrix. I mean, both are important,
Yeah.
but it seems like primary data is the more important stuff, and it's a little harder to get.
It's harder to get, and therefore it's more valuable to when you ultimately have an ideal client profile. Yeah, you can maybe you can get 40-50% of the way there with secondary data, but to your point, Mark, yeah, the primary data, that's really what's going to help you best understand the working relationships that work well with your company.
Yeah,
Right.
I got it in. And it occurs to me that this ideal client profile can apply to organizations and individuals that you've never met before, prospective clients, but it also kind of fits with organizations and individuals that you worked with for a while. You can start to divine some of this information, and likely that primary data, that harder to get stuff, is way easier to get with organizations and people you've worked with in the past.
And you might know it too. You might know it offhand just from the conversations that you have, just from your weekly or monthly touch points with your client,
Right.
and understanding. Like, for example, some primary data around the individuals are like their career ambitions and aspirations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe there's a specific challenge that your primary point of contact is going through that's not related to maybe the overall business challenge, but it's still a pain in the ass, right?
Right.
And if you understand that, and maybe that same challenge for that individual is common among that role in your target accounts. And so if you understand that, then you can bake that into your ideal client profile. You know to look for that. And so if you see that, it's a signal that tells you, hey, this may be a good client for us.
Good. Okay. That I love that. There's multiple layers of data that can be applied both to organizations and to individuals. I think that totally makes sense. My bias is always focusing on individuals, because ultimately, when we're talking about stuff that's on the sales end, we're dealing with people. We're dealing with individuals. Of course, that all of that needs to fit together with their organization as well. All right. So if we've gathered this information from individuals and organizations, both the easy to get stuff and the not so easy to get stuff, how do we then take that and develop an ideal client profile?
Yeah, so these conversations that you're having with your clients, that's absolutely one way to source this information. I think another lens that you might want to take a look at is revenue analysis. Going back and seeing, okay, what's the first gate that we want to take a look at? Where's the high margin revenue coming from? Right? And so you just take a look at that and use that as your primary filter in your analysis, and you might be able to see, oh, okay, there's some commonalities in here. These 3 or 4 clients, they all share one common characteristic. And so that might be one way to unearth a characteristic about your clients that you could go and ask them about it, right? You can go and kind of validate what you're finding in that revenue analysis with those conversations. Another way to surface the different characteristics of your ideal client profile is to ask your employees. They're the ones that are having the conversations with your clients on a day-to-day basis. And so, if you help them understand what to look for, they can start surfacing this information and creating a feedback loop to whoever is involved in developing this ideal client profile.
Yeah, great.
So I think, you asked, how do you develop that? First of all, it's gathering all that information from all those different sources, and then putting it all together I would recommend in a kind of like a one-pager, a one-sheet overview, and something that's easily digestible that you can share across your organization.
Yeah. I like the different components that we're bringing together to form this ICP. The first one you mentioned, interviewing and knowing your customers. I think that's important. You wrap in the revenue part as well, both top line revenue and profitability, both important. And then you go talk to employees. I know I've been in situations in the past, and I'm just picturing that a lot of times these sort of silos of information can be completely independent. Like your employees can love working with this particular client or this particular client type, doing this particular work with them, and the clients may be overjoyed, but the revenue and the profitability might just be non-existent, right? Or you may be working with a particular client and the revenue and the profitability might be great, but your employees might not be happy doing that. So you're pulling all of this information together, creating this sort of one-page kind of profile. I could see how that could create a little bit of conflict, but at least we're starting to pull all this information together and hopefully coming up with something that we can call ideal and we can start to chase after.
Those two scenarios that you just gave, Mark, I think, just by surfacing that information and understanding that there is a conflict there, you can go and you can address the profitability challenge. You can address the employee morale challenge now that you understand that, right?
Right.
And so just by going through this exercise, not only are you working to identify who those good clients are, but you're kind of doing an audit of your existing clients and your existing work at the same time and understanding, do we need to prune, right? Do we need to prune some clients because they're not profitable? Or do we need to invest in increasing employee morale? Because those are that equation does need to be balanced.
Yeah. So you described kind of a one pager. Is that a narrative? Does it have different sections? I mean, what does this sort of one pager profile from your perspective kind of contain and kind of ultimately look like?
I've seen it come about in a couple different ways. I've seen different kinds of ICPs, not only across different companies, but for different roles within the company. So for example, a salesperson or someone who's sitting in a sales seat might want more of like a checklist type of one pager where they're saying, okay, does this prospect meet this criteria? Right. And maybe that's an oversimplification of it, but it's just a reminder for them to look for these things in their sales conversations. Now, on the other side of it, an ideal client profile, a one pager for a marketer might be a bit different, where it's got key messages on there that maybe relate to a business challenge or a specific technology platform that they're using, where you can come in and say, okay, we've got expertise in Oracle or Eloqua or whatever. But I think the important part is getting to that understanding so that you can create that material to enable your team.
Good. So different people in your organizations are going to need different information in an ideal client profile and potentially presented in different ways, which ties really, really well, I think, to what I mentioned initially is this, marketing and sales continuum. Mm-hmm. When we think about what's happening on the marketing end, how are we then taking these ICPs and applying them?
Yeah, I think we just kind of started wading into those waters a little bit. As a marketer, I've used ideal client profiles to influence blog creation and writing blog posts, for example. If you have an individual that you are writing for, your content becomes much more powerful.
Yeah.
And so if you have this ideal client profile, if you have an understanding of who they are and what they care about, your writing reflects that. And so I think that's one use case of an ICP in marketing. What about on the sales end of things? What would you say is one way that you could apply an ICP to sales conversations?
Well, you hinted at it initially there, is that in some way, this ideal client profile needs to inform your qualification process. Mm-hmm. And that's early on in your sales conversations where you're just getting to know an individual in an organization, where you are qualifying them to see if there is fit, right? To see if the two of you can be mutually successful together. So having an ideal client profile likely and hopefully inform some of those checklist items in your qualification. Do they work with organizations like us? Do they know how to work with us? Do they have ongoing needs that align with our expertise? Can ultimately we develop this long-term mutually beneficial relationship? Is this a good fit? Is this worth pursuing? And I can see how this ideal client profile informs all of that in a qualification step in your sales process.
The thought is that if you have that ICP tuned in, then that qualification process is going to result in opportunities with a higher likelihood of closing.
Yeah.
I can give another example on the marketing side of things.
Great.
Email segmentation is a great way to apply your ICP. And you asked me earlier, Mark, can a company have different ICPs, right? Can they have different ideal client profiles? And I think that this is a great way where you can apply multiple ideal client profiles, right? So if you segment your audience, let's just use verticals, industry verticals, for example. So maybe you work at an accounting firm and you've got an industry vertical in the entertainment industry and an industry vertical in manufacturing. So you go to your CRM, you go to your email automation platform, and you have a field for industry. So you could split it by that. And then understanding the different things that are the different challenges that your manufacturing clients are facing versus your entertainment clients, you can craft different offers to put in front of them. You can craft different content that they may find valuable. So that's another way that you can apply your ICP to marketing, is by segmenting your email database.
Good. One that comes to mind that likely spans both sales and marketing is thinking about, further maybe developing new service offerings or refining existing service offerings.
Oh, I like
you
that.
can do that informed by your ICP, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can understand what clients are we serving now in what service areas, and if that's going incredibly well, both for us and for them, how can we further enhance and refine that? Conversely, if you're serving existing clients or offering to new prospective clients in the marketplace a service or an offering that just is completely out of alignment with your ICP, and maybe it's maybe you've done it in the past and it wasn't profitable, or it wasn't something that your clients responded well to, then you can prune that, right? So your ICP can be used to inform this service delivery and how you're teeing all that up in marketing and in sales. So I think that spans both, but I think it's a great tool to kind of put your services sort of under the microscope and take a good look at them.
Yeah, your ICP can absolutely influence R&D. You're developing new services to offer, different ways to add value to those clients. I'll give another example, and this relates to lead generation. Let's say that you have a podcast that you run, right? If you understand who your best fit clients are, invite them onto your podcast and have a conversation, right? And so if you understand, those challenges, let's say it's a prospect that you haven't had a conversation with yet, and you invite them onto your podcast, and then you ask them questions about those challenges that are commonly held by your ideal client profile. Not only are you creating content, but you're also kind of going through that qualification process live in a recorded fashion. So
Great.
There's another way that you could apply an ICP.
Right. I think that's fantastic. So one that I use frequently, and this is about referrals, and referrals are professional introductions. Referrals falls under this umbrella of prospecting, which is this proactive outreach that individuals undertake to pursue great prospective clients. But talking about referrals, you can ask your ideal clients for referrals. You're working with a handful of organizations. Sure, they're all good clients. Everything's going fine, but you might have a subset of those clients, maybe just even a handful, that you would consider ideal. Financially, service delivery wise, relationship wise, it checks all of the boxes, right? If you want more of those clients, use your ICP in the process of going and asking those great clients for introductions, for referrals, right? This is a way to, have your great clients help you make more great clients, right? So hopefully these ideal clients have organizations that behave in a certain way, or maybe there's individuals that, you just work really well together. Chances are pretty good that those individuals that you connect with well will be associated or affiliated with other individuals that you would be able to work well with. So when I think about ICPs and referrals, I think, great, you want to identify your current clients and your current relationships that fit right bullseye in that ideal client profile, and you want to go ask them for introductions to others.
I like that. And I think that there is a relationship there between, the kinds of people. Maybe it's like that X factor, that intangible component. You just hit it off with them, and maybe it's, a certain personality trait. Do you have any other examples, Mark, of applying ICPs to marketing, sales?
This is a good sort of scratching the surface of the ideal client profile. We didn't dig super deeply in how, how to script it, what the specific framework is, et cetera. But I think this highlights the importance of really coming to an understanding of who your ideal clients are, and then taking that information and applying it to service delivery, to marketing, to sales, so that you are always moving in the direction of your ideal clients. I say a lot of times with the organizations I work with is that every choice you make is either moving you towards some desired future state, or maybe even away from it, slightly or even radically. And I think if your decision making in all those different areas I just mentioned are in alignment with your ideal client profile, you will be moving towards that ideal picture you have in your head of your organization, and not away from it.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Your ICP is a North Star to help guide your firm towards success and profitability.
Good. I like it.
So, excellent. Well, Mark, I think this has been a great conversation. Until next time.
Thanks, John. Until then.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Biz Dev. Subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or listen to the show at breakingbizdev.com. This episode was produced by Red Cedar Marketing. If you think a business podcast is right for your company, visit redcedarmarketing.com to learn more.